something that's truly different. It's a great way to add another stream of income to what you're already doing. It's something nobody else is doing. We have been personally investing in real estate for probably 25 years or more at this point. Man, John, time flies. Yike. And so what happened was we started buying a lot of houses. We've done hundreds of deals in the last 20 some odd years. We do whatever types of deals come at us. So we do single family homes, multifamily, wobbly boxes, that's what we call mobile homes down here in Florida. I am from the west coast of Florida. And then of course, John, I started teaching, and so I've been teaching all over the country and across Canada. And so sometimes you just get really tired. So one of the things that my husband and I really like to do is kayak. And so we started going up to the northern part of Florida, up near the Swanee River, Itchnatucky, Santa Fe, those rivers. And we did a lot of kayaking with Lacucci, and we did a lot of kayaking in those particular areas, and we still do. And we were renting cabins and stuff, and we got thinking, this is really stupid. We should buy something, and then, we'll have a place up there to chill instead of, putting out the money to somebody else. So what we ended up doing was we ended up buying a piece of land that actually had a mobile home on it. And then we sold the mobile home, and they took that off the property. And in the area, we're in a very rural area up in North Florida. And so it's about 85% mobile home and about 15% stick-built homes. So what did we do? We built a log home on our property. And so we have 4 acres up there. So that's perfect for us. We open up the gates, we drive down the driveway, and the whole intent was to chill. But what started happening was we're driving, around and driving different places. And there's all this, the whole concept of real estate investing never leaves you. It doesn't matter where you go. And so we'd be driving around going different places, and there was all this vacant land, and it was going, buy me, and so what was I to do? And so that's kind of how our vacant land business started. So most of the vacant land that I buy is about 4.5 hours from where I live most of the time. It's in a very rural area. We buy in 3 different counties in northern Florida. So that's kind of how our vacant land business started. We started by doing tax certificates. We ended up going to tax deed sales. And then, of course, I developed an amazing direct mail campaign that brings a huge, huge return for us. And we're going to talk about all of this today. And so that's kind of how we got into the vacant land business. Now, of course, we have not stopped buying houses and doing all the things we regularly do. This is just an additional stream of income for us. So this is a very part-time business, and it brings us a very high amount of income. And the folks that you're working with are going to be a completely different animal than anything that you are accustomed to in the house buying business. This is a totally different thing. So do me a favor, grab your paper and pencil and be ready to take a whole bunch of really great notes. We're going to take questions at the end. So John, do you want them to put them in the chat box?
That's up to you, Kathy, whatever you're more comfortable with. They can put some in there in case they don't want to forget, and then we can just address that at the
Open
end,
it up. Yeah,
whenever you're
because I want
ready.
to open it up at the end of the call for them to ask whatever questions that they might like. And then, of course, I might be offering some special tools at the end of the call. And so the offer I'm actually going to make is the opportunity for you to invest in my system and be able to do all the things that I do at no cost to you whatsoever. So make sure that you hang with us all the way to the end of the call. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so why should you develop a marketing strategy to find profitable land deals in the first place? Well, to get highly motivated vacant land sellers contacting you first. Folks, if you can get these landowners contacting you first, obviously you're going to make a much better deal. Number 2, buy vacant land no one knows is for sale, including the sellers. Folks, these really are sellers that have a variety of problems they need to solve, and they have no idea how to do that until they're contacted by you. And one of their biggest problems is they've got this piece of land wherever that they need to get rid of. So if, you know, for me, the properties are all in Florida, or for the majority, they're in Florida. We do have a couple strewn here and there in other states. We have a couple in North Carolina, for example. So you're going to be buying properties that no one knows are for sale, including the sellers, because they have no idea what to do with them until they're contacted by you. You're going to implement strategies and systems that are going to net you profitable land deals. You're going to invest in vacant land for nickels and dimes on the dollar. This is something that's also very unique to vacant land. One, very inexpensive. And number two, unlike a house, land pays for itself very quickly. And so we're going to be talking a lot about that today. And then you're going to create long-term and short-term income, leasing and seller financing vacant land. And folks, nobody does this. Almost everyone that I know that deals in vacant land, who's not doing it my way, of course, are buying and flipping vacant land. And folks, once the vacant land is gone, that's it. And so this is an opportunity that you really want to be able to invest in and to be able to grow your business. You're going to create multiple streams of income on the same piece of land. And actually that's something, John, that I've been doing for years. So we basically lease the same piece of property to more than one person. And actually, and then I just recently found out there's a name for it. It's called land hacking. I don't like that. I think that's derogatory. So we've always called it land sharing. And we're going to talk about that today because that's a really cool way for you to get even more income on the same piece of vacant land. So we're going to talk about that too. All right, so how do we find vacant land deals? Number one, direct mail marketing. We're going to talk about that. Tax certificates. In Missouri, you are a tax certificate state. For those of you, I know we have a lot of other states on the call with us today besides Missouri, but for those of you in Missouri, you are a tax certificate state. So one of the ways that we've bought vacant land is by buying tax certificates. So in Florida, you buy a tax certificate on the same piece of land for 3 years, and then you can file for the tax deed on that property. So that's one way that we acquire vacant land. Another way that we acquire vacant land is by going to tax deed sales. And we've picked up some great deals there. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. There are websites that you can explore. One is landflip.com, one is homesandland.com. Signage. So yard signs, you know, land for sale, signage on your vehicle saying we buy land, apparel. Now, I will tell you that if you are in a fairly rural kind of an area and you have signage on your vehicle or you're wearing a t-shirt or a hat that says we buy vacant land, know that you're going to get stopped. We can't go anywhere without being stopped and asked questions about what we do because people have vacant land for sale or vacant land that they have that they're paying taxes on that they don't want. And so this is just awesome. Newspaper ads. We run ads in the newspapers in the local areas, and we check the ads in the newspapers in local areas. In the rural areas, the newspaper comes out once a week. And so the way that I do that is I have the newspaper mailed to me here where I live most of the time, from the rural areas where I'm buying vacant land, so I can keep a kind of an eye on things. Craigslist, Facebook ads, and then working with real estate brokers up in the areas where you want to buy vacant land. And of course, MLS is a possibility as well. So those are some of the ways that you can find vacant land deals. And then why direct mail marketing? Well, number one, you're going to have an endless stream of motivated sellers begging you to take their vacant land off their hands. Folks, I mean that truly. And I'll show you examples in a little bit. You get to control the number of pieces that are going out and when, and then specifically who you're targeting. Then what I want you to do, just like those of you who are marketing magic students, I want you to create a response mechanism in the body of the letter. And because if you don't tell your seller what you want them to do, they're not going to do anything at all. So we create a response mechanism in the body of the letter that tells the seller exactly what we want them to do and what information we need in order to determine if there's a deal there to be made. And by doing that, when the deals hit my desk, when the responses from the seller hit my desk and they hit my mailbox and they hit my email, the responses are already pre-screened for you. This is killer. This is just such an amazing time saver. And it pre-screens out all the junk that you wouldn't want to work with. You're going to reach sellers who would never get your message in any other way. Direct mail in this particular instance has absolutely no competition whatsoever. I'm telling you the truth. Vacant land is a completely different animal than buying houses. And you're going to be able to turn very small marketing dollars into big profits. So types of vacant land. Number one are in city. These are in urban areas. And so you're going to be able to find properties like that. And they're zoned commercial. So they'll be, they'll be they'll be zoned probably like mixed use and light commercial. So these are the in-city properties. Rural areas, you're going to find farmland, agricultural, those types of properties. Commercial, and I do a little bit of commercial. I don't do a lot, but I do a little bit of commercial. And the way that I got involved in commercial vacant land was there is a company, and if I told you who it was, you'd know who it was. So I'm not going to tell you. But basically what this company's business plan is, they go in, they buy vacant land, they build a building on it, they turn it into a specific retail store or retail stores, and then they lease that whole thing to someone else. And then that someone else runs it and pays them monthly. And then they go do another one and they do another one and they do another one. So we accidentally fell into this part of the commercial because they were getting ready to build one of these things way too close to one of my residential pieces of vacant land in this area. And we got into a whole big deal about it anyway. And so I ended up hooking up with these guys. And so that's what we do. We will find pieces of vacant land that meet their needs. They buy the vacant land from us, then they build their building on it, and then they lease their whole deal to someone else. So that's something else that we've been doing with vacant land. And then there's industrial vacant land. So that would be like storage. We have one piece of industrial vacant land that has a canoe outpost on it. So these are the different types of vacant land that you are going to be dealing with. Probably 80% of what I do is rural, the farmland, agricultural, those types of pieces of vacant land. We do some urban, we do some industrial, and then we do commercial just for this one company that we work with. So that's kind of what we're doing. First thing I want you to do, folks, just like I tell you with my marketing magic, with my other system, learn your demographic. Figure out what your market looks like where you live. What kind of land do you want to buy? What is it that you would like to do? Okay. And then create the land deals that you want to do in your market. Okay. So here are the target prospects that we like to work with. Number one, out-of-state owners. So this is a person who owns a piece of vacant land wherever it is that you live, but they don't live here full time. So these are the pieces of vacant land that someone, probably 80% of the out-of-state owner pieces of vacant land that I do are pieces of land that people inherited. And the letters I get are, I was left this piece of vacant land by my mother, my great-grandmother, my uncle. I don't want it. I'm tired of paying tax bills. Take it off my hands. I've never even seen it. Okay, that's probably like 60, 80% of the letter, the responses that I get from out-of-state owners with vacant land. Folks, these are killer deals. Quitclaim deeds, obviously, quitclaim deeds are mostly estates. Once again, somebody's inherited a piece of vacant land they don't want. And then also with the out-of-state owners, the other thing that I will typically get is where someone bought a piece of land here in Florida and they intended to retire here and build something on it, whether it was a mobile home or a house or put their RV on it or whatever that might be. And now they're not going to do that anymore. And that plan has changed for them. So that's another type of vacant land that we work with a lot. Tax deed sales, obviously, we buy pieces of land from tax deed sales. The tax certificates, like I mentioned before. Past due taxes. This is the best list you will ever work with. So what happens is, at least where I live, and a lot of the areas where a lot of my students live throughout the country, when the tax certificate sale is coming up, they will either mail or they will list it on the tax collector office, or they will put the list of available properties on a list that comes in the newspaper. Okay, so it's May, and I will start getting my tax certificate list here very soon, and they'll be in the newspaper. And basically what those lists show, it shows the name and the address of the person. It shows, like, 1.5 acres, and here's the tax ID number and so forth. And those are the lists that I use to mail from. So I will pick, that's the best list in the world that you can mail from that will bring you the highest number of leads for vacant land deals. So write that down. The past due tax list is absolutely killer. And then, of course, the inherited, which we just talked about. Senior landowners, same thing. They bought this piece of land, or they've owned this piece of land for a long time, wherever it is you live. And now whatever they intended to do with it, they're not going to be able to do that. And they don't want this piece of land anymore. So these are the types of targeted prospects that we are focusing on primarily for vacant land. So how do I fund vacant land deals? Now, folks, understand that for the most part, these pieces of vacant land pay for themselves very quickly. So you can use your own money to buy them. You can use money in your Roth IRA. We have funded many deals inside our Roth IRA, and we have grown the balance in our Roth IRA strictly from throwing these vacant land deals in there. So that's really awesome. Credit cards, your 401k, we've also funded deals inside our 401k. You can use private lenders or seller financing. Folks, vacant land is the ideal place for you to find seller financing. Absolutely awesome. We have done lots and lots of deals where the seller has funded the deal for us. As a matter of fact, I'm going to show you a little deal that we did later on. This deal was a 2-acre piece of land that attached to the piece of land that we already owned. And it was going to make it a corner lot. And so I wrote the guy a letter once a month. And I basically said, I own the piece of property next door. I really want this piece of land. When you're ready to sell, I'm ready to buy. And I sent him that letter like once a month, for about 8 or 9 months. And then after about 8 or 9 months, he contacted me back. And he said, look, if you want this piece of land, I'll sell it to you. I want $1,000 down and $100 a month till it's paid. And that's so typical of the responses I get. And obviously we bought that piece of land. So seller financing is huge in vacant land. All right. So determining land value. This is important. Now you've got this piece of vacant land. You're interested in buying it. How do I figure out what it's worth? So the first thing that you can do is talk to local appraisers. Folks that are local to the area have a really good idea what land is worth. And once you start buying vacant land in certain areas in your counties, you will start to learn very quickly what the values of the land is. Check with the property appraiser's office. That's another way to figure out what the value of land is in a specific area. Use CoreLogic or RealQuest Express for comps. Check price listings for similar pieces of vacant land. Speak to local realtors. Folks, especially if you're buying in a rural area, those realtors know everything. It's like the Telegraph Express. I mean, they know everything. So realtors can really be a really important part of your vacant land business. How much availability to vacant land is there? Because that's going to affect the value of your land. Is the land in a desirable area? Like, is it in a swamp or is it in a flood zone? Those are things we kind of want to stay away from, and we'll talk about that a little bit more also. Does the land front a main road? Okay, that's huge. If you can buy a piece of land on a main road, oh boy, you just hit the jackpot. So the three prerequisites for vacant land are main road, paved road, dirt road. All three of those will affect the value of the vacant land. Okay. What is the income potential of that land? What could you do with it? Okay, so be thinking about what you want to do with vacant land in your own business. And I'm going to give you lots of great ideas today. We're just starting to kind of touch a little bit of things right now. How large is the piece of vacant land? Okay, so what can you do with it based on the size of the vacant land? Could you subdivide it maybe? Could you lease that piece of vacant land to multiple people? Could you open a business on that piece of vacant land? I have one student who did zip lining. I have another student who has an archery range on one of his pieces of vacant land. So there's so much that you can do. Does it have utilities or availability to utilities? The more utilities a piece of land already has, the higher the value becomes. And then utilities are going to vary depending on where you live. Where I buy vacant land, utilities are power, power, well, and septic. Okay, so that's what we have. We don't have public water and sewer in some areas that you'll be buying, and you will. Some of you will have gas. We don't have that. So it's just going to depend kind of on where you live as to what those utilities will be. Is the land on a paved road or a dirt road? Paved road is higher value than a dirt road is. Okay, just to give you some ideas. All right, so let me show you a couple of the deals that I have done. So I want to show you about value, and then I want to talk about how these pieces of land pay for themselves very quickly. So here's a little piece of land that we did. It's just 1.25 acres. We paid $1,500 for this piece of land. We used our own money. We just paid for it. And then what I did was I talked to the neighbors around this piece of vacant land. This one is in a subdivision. So I talked to the neighbors around this piece of vacant land, and we ended up selling this piece of vacant land to the next door neighbor's daughter. So the folks were getting elderly, and the daughter wanted to be able to be close to her parents in order to kind of keep an eye on them and help them out. So we sold this property on owner financing. We sold the property for $14,950. She paid us $2,500 down as a deposit. Gee, I paid $1,500 for that piece of land. That piece of land just paid for itself, guys, right off the top. And then I owner financed the balance for 8.5% over a period of 5 years. And my total profit on this piece of land will be $19,000. And so I'm getting a check from her for $379 a month that just goes straight into the bank. Is this cool stuff? Absolutely. All right, here's another one. This is 2 acres, fenced, has a power pole, has septic. I bought this from a tax certificate sale. There were 4 pieces of land. Each piece of land was a 1/2 acre for a total of a square 2-acre piece. So 1/2 acre, 1/2 acre, 1/2 acre, 1/2 acre for a square 2-acre piece of land. So we bought the tax certificates on those 4 pieces of land for 3 years, and then we filed for the tax deed, and we ended up buying this piece. That's another picture of it. Okay, so 2 acres, fenced, power pole, septic, and it had 2 concrete pads. Because what happened here was there were 2 RVs on the land, and both of the RVs got repoed. So so they ended up with, and they weren't paying the taxes. So we ended up with this piece of awesome vacant land. So here's what happened. We purchased it from the tax certificates. It was 4 pieces of land. Each one was a half an acre. They were all in the same family. Obviously, that makes sense. So we paid 3 years of taxes on all 4 pieces of land for a total of $1,600, because the taxes on each one were only a couple $100. Okay, so we paid 3 years of taxes, which was a total of $1,600 on all 4. Then we ran into a glitch. That will happen. Somebody I know may not have done her homework entirely before we bought this. And what happened was we ended up with a glitch on one of the half-acre pieces, and the person had passed away, and we had to do quiet title. So we hired the attorney, we did quiet title. It was $2,300 to file quiet title on that piece of property. We ended up contacting a company that we work with who does land and mobile home packages. So what we do is we send them a list of the vacant land that we have available. So they took this piece of vacant land, they coupled it with a mobile home that they sold to a buyer, and they financed the buyer's deal, and we got paid in full for our vacant land. So I didn't have to advertise, I didn't have to do anything. Okay, so this was sold as a 2-acre lot for $29,500, and our total profit on this deal, even with the glitch, was $25,000. So that's pretty cool for something that we really didn't do much. Okay, here's another piece of land. This deal was so cool. So my husband and I kayak a lot. I told you that already. This was 100 by 200 feet lot in city limits, and it was zoned mixed use, which was so cool. It was mostly cleared. It was on a paved road. It had no well, no septic, but it did have a power pole. Okay. We paid $1,750 for this piece of land. So I got chatting with one of my guys that my husband and I work with, as far as, shuttling for us, like they drop us at the top of the river and then we paddle back down to where our car is. And so they were like our shuttle company that we were using. They owned a canoe outpost. So this piece of land was like a block away from a main boat landing. So the company, the canoe outpost, ended up leasing this piece of land for us. They put a metal building on the piece of land so that they could store their extra canoes, kayaks, life jackets, paddles, that kind of stuff. So we paid $1,750 for this piece of land. We leased it to them for 18 months for $550 a month, for a total of $9,900. Now that doesn't count all the free shuttles we got for that whole time. So that was pretty cool. So that was like more money on top of it, because our shuttles and all our kayak trips were completely free for this whole period of time. So then the guy came to me and he goes, "Look, Kath, I'm tired of paying you guys rent every month. Can I just buy the piece of vacant land?" So we did. We ended up selling it to him for $9,500. The buyer paid all the closing costs. Our total profit on this deal was $17,700 plus all the perks we're still getting. So that's kind of cool. So this was another really neat deal that we did. All right, so here's a letter that I got from a seller, and I'll show you the deal in a second. Here's the letter. "Dear Kennebrooks, I'm interested in selling my property by the Swanee River. I bought it in hopes that I might move home someday, but my mom passed away August the 6th, so there's no need to keep it. I want $2,000. I'm not sure what the physical address is, but I can find out for you if you're interested. Thank you." So she sent me her email address, and she sent a copy of her tax bill with this letter that she sent us. So the thing that was cool was, of course, the tax bill had the tax ID number, which helped me locate the piece of vacant land. And then here's the little deal. It was a half an acre. It was a piece of vacant land. It was not cleared. It was in a subdivision. It had no utilities. It was on a private road with shared access, which I don't like. Okay. Shared access means you're sharing that road with other people that live. It's a private road that's maintained by the people who live on the road. I did not like this deal, but it had potential. It was in a subdivision. We paid $1,200 for it. We ran an ad, we put out signage on the piece of vacant land. We very quickly sold it for $7,700. The buyer paid the closing costs. It was just a little deal. $6,500 was the profit on that one, but it was like really quick. I mean, we had the piece of property, we closed on it within a couple of weeks, and then we sold it probably 3 weeks later. So we were in this thing for a total of like 2 months. So wasn't my favorite deal because I didn't like the private road with shared access. This worked out fine, but sometimes that can be a real problem. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. All right, and then here's another one. This deal was killer, really cool. So 1.25 acres piece of vacant land. It fronted a main highway. It had a power pole and it had a partial driveway and cleared frontage. It was purchased from direct mail. The person contacted us from one of our direct mail campaigns. We bought this property for $3,000. Now, before we sold it, we kept it for like a year because what we were doing on this particular piece of property, because it had the frontage and it had that partial driveway, we were using it for temporary leases. So temporary leases are really cool. So it was a Christmas tree lot. It was a veggie stand. When the Buccaneers were in the Super Bowl, that we had a stand there, not us, but we leased it to these folks who had a stand where they were selling all kind of Buccaneer stuff, hats and jerseys and T-shirts and all that kind of stuff. So let's see, veggie stand, fireworks. It was a fireworks stand during the 4th of July. So these are short-term leases. So we did short-term leases for like a year with this particular piece of vacant land. And remember what I was telling you about land sharing? This was an opportunity for us to do lease sharing. So at one point in time, we had the veggie stand stayed. Like she was there every weekend. So the veggie stand was leasing, and then we had other land leases also. So we had the fireworks stand, and then we had the Christmas tree stand, and then we had the Buccaneers, and then we had some political signage, and they leased from us to put their political signage. So that was one where we did dual leasing on the same piece of land. Okay, so that we call that land sharing. So besides all of and then we ended up selling this piece of land for $18,900. The buyer paid all the closing costs, and our total profit was $16,000 plus a year's worth of temporary leases, which was probably another $7,000 or $8,000 total. So that was another piece of land that we did. That one was very cool. That was a lot of fun. And there it is. The person that we ended up selling this piece of property to built a tiny home on it. So that's his tiny home. I didn't have a good clear picture of it, so I went back and took a quick picture. So we were using the frontage. He's let it grown out a little bit, and then that whole driveway area was used for the temporary leases. So that was very cool. Here's one of my student deals. This is David. He's in Illinois. So this was in an urban subdivision. He bought a lot that was 85 by 120. It was zoned single family home, or single family residential is actually the way it's zoned. The value of the property was $18,000. It was mostly cleared. It had gorgeous trees on it. It was on a paved road. It had no utilities. He paid $3,500 for that piece of land. His closing costs, because he had past due taxes he had to pay, so his closing costs were $1,500. He did a quick sale to an investor builder. The gentleman was an investor who builds homes for $14,500, and his quick profit on that deal was $9,500. So there's a lot of different things you can do with vacant land. And here's one more. This is Sarah. Sarah is in Brevard County. She's in South Florida. This was a 1/4 acre lot, not cleared. She bought it for $8,600. She used a private lender on this, believe it or not, for $8,600. The assessed value of the land was $14,000. The market value was $38,000. She sold it for $36,000 for a total profit of $27,000. This was in a subdivision that was zoned residential. So, and she didn't want to have to build a house on it because that's not what she does. So that's why she sold this particular property. And her total profit on that deal was $27,000. So is this pretty cool? I love vacant land. I really do. So can I buy a vacant land anywhere? Absolutely. And the way you do that is pretty simple because again, I live 4 hours away from where I'm buying vacant land. And I put deals together all the time without ever seeing the vacant land. Okay. So first of all, you can physically go see your piece of vacant land. Get your seller to send you photos of it if they have it. Use Google Earth. Okay, so that's a really good way to see a piece of vacant land. Call planning and zoning and find out information on the property. You know, how is it zoned? You know, is it in a flood area? You know, what's the flood zone, you know, the flood zoning and things like that. So you can call planning and zoning and get a lot of information. What are the boundaries? All of those kinds of things. Get a realtor to go look at the property for you. So one of the things that I do in my business is sometimes we use a realtor to sell vacant land for us. And so when I need him to go look at a piece of vacant land for me, he will do that because we're already doing business with him. Use a vendor to look at it for you. So if you're working, for example, with an inspector or a surveyor regularly, you know, those types of folks or a realtor, you can get them to go look at that piece of property for you. And then you can call the assessor's office, and they will also help you to find information on that piece of vacant land. So these are some of the ways that you can get all the information you need about a piece of vacant land that you're looking to buy. When I use one of my vendors or a realtor to go out and look at a piece of vacant land for me, of course, they take a bunch of photographs of it and send them to me. And then they tell me whether or not they think it's a good deal or not. So that helps. All right, finding the owners of vacant land, the letter that you mailed, talk to the neighbors if there are any close by your piece of vacant land. Check utility companies using the property ID number or the name of the seller. Databases, the tax collector's office, title company, skip trace services. When we start working together today, I have an awesome skip trace service who can find the owners of these vacant pieces of land faster than anybody that I know. The property assessor's office, once again, Google Earth, once again. Now, Google Earth, when you look up a piece of vacant land, it will show right on there who the owner is and their mailing address. And the mailing address is where their tax bill is sent. Planning and zoning, once again, telephone directory websites. And in rural areas, once again, talk to realtors because they know everything. So this is a concept that we learned that changed the way that we buy vacant land forever, guys. So how do I get junk buildings removed from my vacant land at no cost to me and get a tax write-off? Is this pretty cool? Absolutely. So the 2-acre piece of vacant land that I told you about earlier that I bought to attach to ours, that's what it looked like when I got it. So I called one of my realtor buddies and I said, because now if you look at the picture, I don't know how big this picture looks for you, but if you look to the left of the door and to the right, I'm sorry, yeah, to the right of the air conditioner and to the left of the door, you will see a white blob on the ground. That's the toilet. Okay. So this thing was a wreck. And so I talked to a realtor that I know and I asked him, you know, do we have somebody that can remove this thing from the piece of vacant land? So they can't hook it up and pull it out because it was dilapidated. It was just falling apart. And so we were trying to figure out how we were going to get rid of this thing. So when I was talking to my realtor says, oh, this is easy stuff, Kath. We can do this. No problem at all. Call the fire department. I'm like, what? Let them burn it for you. I'm like, what? Here's what happens, folks. And this is a technique that is available in every county in the country, including down here in Bradenton, where I live most of the time, because I checked it out. So what happens is fire departments and EMTs and all of that, they need practice. Okay. So they need to get practice at putting out fires and making sure that there's no smoldering and all of those things. So we called the fire department and they said, yeah, we would love to use that for a practice burn. That would be fabulous. So at that time, we were in a burn ban. And what a burn ban is that it's too dry to burn anything, like not brush and certainly not this. So we had to wait until we were out of burn ban, until it started raining again for things to be damp enough that we were out of burn ban. So fire department calls us, literally calls us on Friday afternoon, like at 4 o'clock. I'm down here in where I live normally. And they called us at like 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, and they said we're coming tomorrow morning, and we're going to burn your mobile home. Like, uh-oh, because we're down here. So we packed up the car and we spent 4 hours and we drove up to our other house, which is next door to this, and we stayed overnight. And about 6 o'clock Saturday morning, we start hearing all this noise and laughter and music. And like, what? Are we having a party or what? And so we get out of our house and we walk over, and there are all of these teenagers, like 16, 17, 18, 19 years old, fire department, fire trucks, ambulances, the whole nine. Like everybody driving by was stopping to see what was going on. And they burned it. So they burned it. And they actually took out the trees that are in the very front. They burned those too, which was so cool. And they burned it some more. And when they got done, it looked like this. And so what was left was the bottom part of the mobile home, the metal framework. So we called a scrapper, and he came out and he took all that metal framework away. And this is what we were left with. And that's what it looks like today. So learning how to burn stuff on a piece of vacant land will change the way you buy vacant land forever. It's also a tool to get a cheap price from your seller. Okay. So, so if you have like a mobile home or a shed or a dilapidated house, like a wood frame dilapidated house, anything like that, they will do these fire departments will do these burns for you. So here's what happened. They do this for free. So basically, when you let them burn a piece of whatever on your piece of land, you're making a donation to the fire department. And this was a tax write-off for us. So this was absolutely amazing. Took care of a problem that we had, and it was a tax write-off. And to be perfectly honest with you, I was so incredibly impressed with the whole process. They were there till like 6 o'clock that night, making sure that there was no smoldering going on and all of that kind of stuff. We wrote them a check. We gave them a donation. We wrote them a check and we gave them a donation because we were so incredibly impressed. And that donation will help toward educating these young people and buying equipment for these young people so that they can graduate and go on to like EMT school and become firemen and women and all of that. So very, very exciting stuff. And it changed the way that we buy vacant land forever. All right. So here's our results from direct mail campaigns to vacant land owners. 147 letters. This is one mailing that we did. Okay, these mailings are fairly small. If you do a huge mailing for vacant land, you are absolutely not going to be able to handle the response. So this was 147 letters that we mailed, 19 leads, 13% response rate. I swear to you that that is so typical of the normal response rate that we get from vacant land mailings. That's what I'm saying. This is a different animal, guys, completely different animals. We bought 7 pieces of land from those 147 letters. 3 of them we sold, 4 of them we leased. And then when you do this, you will decide where things are in your own business. Do you want to sell this one? Do you want to keep this one? Do you have a really awesome plan for this piece of land, or is it something that you would rather sell? So for example, if I buy a piece of land that's in a rigid type of subdivision where all you can do is build a house on it, I will sell that piece. That's something I will sell because I'm not a builder either. So that just gives you kind of an idea. This is a different animal, guys. All right, so selling vacant land. Now, when we start working together today, I have a ton more ways to sell vacant land than we're about to discuss. Number one, signage on your vacant land. And you want to put the signage like up in a tree so that it can be seen when someone is driving by, as opposed to just being on the ground. Because remember, these pieces of vacant land are generally not cleared. So you've got like brush and weeds and things like that. Listed on Facebook, Trulia, and Craigslist, of course. List with a realtor if you want to sell it that way. You can offer owner financing. You can auction your land. We've done that. You can work with a developer or a home dealer, just like we did. Like we work a lot. We have 3 different mobile home dealers that we work with regularly, because most of the homes where we are buying vacant land are mobile homes. Okay. You can work with commercial developers, which is what we also do with this one company. You can list it for sale in the local newspaper. Wholesale buyers, if you want to wholesale a piece of vacant land, you can do that. You can list it on the MLS without working with a realtor. You can just list it directly on MLS. It costs about $500 to list on MLS without a realtor. You can list it on landflip.com, ranchflip.com if your piece of land is large enough. Land America, and there are other vacant land websites that you can list on. That was just 3 that kind of came to the top of my head. All right. Leasing vacant land strategies. Number 1, talk to the neighbors. I have a piece of vacant land, and I've actually had podcasts done, and another guru out there wrote an article about me and this particular piece of vacant land. Because the story is kind of hilarious, I think. So the gentleman owns so we talked to a neighbor who had a worm farm next door to our piece of vacant land. He raises agricultural worms. I have learned more about agricultural worms in the last 2 years than I ever thought I would. So we were talking to him and he said, yes, I would like to lease that piece of vacant land from you guys. Absolutely. I need to expand my worm farm. And so being the dummy that I am, or was, I said to him, I said, well, that's really cool. So, but if we do this deal, how are you going to get the worms out of the ground? And when he got done chuckling at me, what they do is they have tubes and big tubs. So tubes, tubes that, and the tubes attach one tub to another, and that's where the worms are. So I didn't know that. So that's how they raise agricultural worms. So he's doing no damage to my piece of vacant land at all. And he took his tractor and cleared the area that he needed. Thank you, Mr. Lessor. So that was cool. And then once they get done with using certain parts of the soil for the worms, then they sell the soil as potting soil, as very rich potting soil. And I got some from him, so that was cool because I really like plants. So anyway, so that story was so funny that there's actually been a couple of articles written on me about that, and a podcast that was done highlighting that particular, how Kathy's strategies make big profits on worms or something like that. Billboard companies. This is really cool, but billboard companies have a little bit of caveats here and there. So in certain areas, for example, you can't rent to someone who's doing lit billboards. They can't be lit. Sometimes they can't be more than a certain height or a certain width, things like that. But the billboard companies know that, like they know in different areas what they can and can't do. So we've rented to billboard companies. Billboard companies are another one where you can multi-use your land. So a billboard company doesn't need like a big piece of vacant land. So they're going to use that part of the vacant land that's closest to the road, obviously, to do their billboard. And you can take that same piece of land and also lease it to someone else. So for example, I have a piece of land that has a billboard on it. And then I also lease it to a landscape company who stores like boulders and railroad ties and gravel and things like that on it. So that's like renting the same piece of land to two different entities at the same time. And we call that land sharing. But that's something that nobody thinks about but me. So I'm sharing it with you. Agricultural uses. So there's, you can use it for growing. You can use it for herding goats. We had one piece of vacant land where they used it for goats. So there's a lot of different agricultural uses for vacant land. Storage, cars, boats, trailers, storage units if you want to do that. Or you can have open storage where you have people that store their cars, boats, trailers. We have a couple of food trucks where they store their food trucks on our property. So storage, parking. Parking is cool. So if you have a piece of land that's like near a stadium or near like an exhibition center or something like that where there's overflow parking, you can use a piece of that vacant land for parking. Pasture land, goats, cows, horses, that type of thing. Urban nurseries. This is cool. Some of the leasing of vacant land that I do has a tendency to move towards like my personal hobbies. And I am a plant person, big time. Okay. So I have an urban nursery on one of my pieces of vacant land. And so what they do is they set up a greenhouse and they grow plants in pots. So they're not disturbing our soil or doing anything with our vacant land other than having this big greenhouse on our vacant land. And they are an urban nursery and people can come there and buy plants and things like that. So that's cool. Camping and glamping. Glamping is glamorous camping. So they use like these fancy tents or I've seen them turn wine barrels into like small, like tiny house type, rentals. So camping and glamping. Landscape companies, I just explained that. Pine straw. This is another one where you could co-op the piece of vacant land. So if you have a lot of pine trees on a piece of vacant land, companies will come and they will clean up your land and they will take the pine straw and pay you for it because they use pine straw for mulch and furniture stuffing, which I did not know. So you could have a billboard on one part of the property, and then the rest of your pine trees could be used for someone who is gathering pine straw. So that's another idea for shared land. There's so many more. I could make a whole day seminar out of this. We only have like an hour and a half this morning. Okay, so you can lease land for crops. I have students in Georgia right now who are both leasing land for sod and turf. And so they take the sod and the turf, like they grow it, and then they take it off and then they start over. So that's pretty cool. And then look at your own demographic. What kinds of things are available where you live? Okay, so like in Georgia, sod and turf and cotton were big. And leasing vacant land for that was awesome. We don't have that here in Florida, so my leasing needs are different. So look at your demographic and see what it looks like to you wherever it is that you live. And then you can lease to businesses so they can expand what they're doing. We've had them like companies that do seal coating and concrete and stuff like that, and so they're able to like store their trucks and store equipment and things like that. So that's another idea. When we start working together today, I have like 25 or 30 different ways for you to lease vacant land. And one of the things that I do is as my students come up with new ideas that they're doing in their areas, I send out quarterly emails to all of my students and let them know about new ideas that we have. So let's talk about increasing the value of a piece of vacant land. So now you've got this piece of vacant land and you want to increase the value of it. Number one, get a survey. Survey will definitely increase the value, or at least find the markers. Okay, so if you can find the markers and flag them, that's another way for you to increase the value of the vacant land, because if somebody's going to lease it or they're going to buy it, then they can actually see what it is. Okay, clear it, curb appeal, just like a house in this case. So you can just clear like the underbrush. They call that forest mulching. So you leave the trees and you clear like the underbrush to make the piece of land look more attractive. On a larger parcel, you can subdivide. Okay, so if you've got a big piece of vacant land, you can subdivide that piece of vacant land and then sell the individual pieces of vacant land or sell the whole piece already subdivided. That brings the value way up there. Change the zoning. This is the quickest, easiest way for you to change, to increase the value of your piece of vacant land. So we have found it really easy to change a piece of vacant land from either agricultural to residential or residential to light use, or urban commercial, because urban commercial is like soft usage, like a doctor's office or in a CPA's office, hair salon, something like that. That's like a soft commercial. And I know some of this is going way over your head right now. But once we start working together and if you decide to go ahead and invest in my system, this will make a whole lot more sense to you. Add amenities. The more amenities you add, the more valuable the land becomes. So cut a drive, add power. You can add utilities. So if it's water or gas or whatever that is where you live, you can add a concrete pad. If you live in an area where I live and we do well in septic, you can have a perk test done. That will increase the value of your land. A perk test determines how well the land is going to drain, which is real important for well and septic. Okay. And then once again, you can lease your land to multiple users. And I don't know anybody else that's doing that almost besides me. So that's something really cool. All right, due diligence. Folks, very important to do your due diligence before you buy a piece of vacant land. When we start working together, you will see in the manual that there's a whole section on due diligence where I go into a whole lot of detail on that, okay? Because it's really important for you to know about your piece of vacant land before you buy it. So take a look at the piece of vacant land, okay? You know, what does it look like? Is it yucky? Is it loaded with trash? Those kinds of things. What's the current zoning? Are you able to change the zoning? What's the topography of the land look like? Is it flooded? Is it really rocky? Is it like straight up and down on the side of a hill? I don't have that, but you might. Okay. So you need to check out the topography of your piece of land. Are there tax liens and other obligations sitting against that piece of vacant land that need to be taken care of? What types of utilities are available to that piece of vacant land? Are there usage restrictions? Is it buildable? So a usage restriction, for example, would be in a subdivision where all you can do is build a house. That's a usage restriction, okay? Is it buildable? Can you build something on it? Is there access to the land or is it landlocked? Landlocked is not necessarily an impossible thing. So this is where you can do road access. So you got to get deeded access from the other owners on that street in order to access your piece of vacant land. Or in my case, I bought a 7-acre piece of vacant land that backed up to a piece of vacant land I already owned. So now I've got a 10-acre piece of vacant land, 7 and the 3 I already had. So that's another way to take care of a piece of landlocked property. Okay, so can it be subdivided? Because being subdivided can also make it more useful and more valuable for you. Is it in a flood zone? This was hilarious. 2 years ago, I had 5 pieces of vacant land for sale. And where my vacant land is in northern Florida, is in the Big Bend area. We got a ton of rain over a period of like 3 or 4 months. And everywhere the land was like flooded, and none of mine were flooded. They were all clear, but they sold bam, 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 one right after the other, because people got to see that they were not flooded pieces of land, that they were nice, clear pieces of land. And all 5 of them sold one right after. I mean, literally in like 2.5, 3 weeks, all 5 of them sold. So that was very cool. And then what are the neighboring properties like? You know, are they horrible and yicky and loaded with trash and drawing rats and stuff like that? You don't want that, okay? So you want neighboring pieces of land that are kind of, you know, that are decent looking, at least, that aren't all loaded with junk, depending on what you're going to do with that piece of land, okay? If you're going to use it for a junkyard, which you could, then it doesn't matter. So but due diligence is really important when you're buying a piece of land and determining then what you're going to do with that piece of land. Where do I get the list? I know that's just burning on your heart. Okay, so first of all, you can physically go down to your property assessor's office or the tax collector's office and get the lists that you need to mail with. Don't call them on the phone because they're going to blow you off. Go down there and physically get these lists. These are lists that you're going to use repetitively. Okay, so it's not like you're going to use the list once and you're done with it. It's a list you're going to use repetitively. For example, the list of tax certificates, generally where I am buying pieces of vacant land, are huge. So we do some, and then we do some more, and then we do some more. So we only mail out like a couple hundred letters at a time, because this is not like buying houses. The response rate is huge, and you have to be able to respond to the sellers as they're contacting you. So you don't want to mail out huge numbers of letters because it's going to be completely ineffective. When we start working together today, I provide list brokers for you all over the country, no matter where you live, to provide lists for you. So we also do work with some list brokers who have listings of vacant land, for example, that have been inherited, and senior homeowners, stuff like that, that's a little more specialized. We have list brokers who can provide those lists for you. So I don't want you out there reinventing the wheel. So there are keys to your success or failure. Number one, you want to target the right prospects, which we already talked about. Make it easy for the seller to respond to you. So you definitely want to use that response mechanism in the body of the letter and give them multiple ways to respond to you. So give them a mailing address, give them a telephone number, give them mailing address, email address, phone number, fax number, if you still happen to have a fax machine. The more ways you give a seller to respond to you, the more of them are going to. And this is also already a very high response rate type of marketing to these sellers. Use the right language and the right letter. Use a proven list. Use a proven system. Once again, I don't want you out there reinventing the wheel. Be consistent with your marketing. If whether you're doing a little bit or you're doing a lot, you need to be consistent with your marketing in order to continue to have deals coming in regularly. The majority of the deals that you're going to buy are going to come from the first through your second contact with these sellers. Okay. And once again, very high response rates. All right, so here's the response rates from sequential mailings. These are mine and my students throughout the country because I track everybody. First mailings on the average 8 to 13% all day long, all day long. Second mailings 14 to 18% or more, okay? Because you're remailing to the same lists. Residual is key. Residual is always key. The more you gently touch your seller with your message, the more of them are going to respond to you, okay? So here's a couple of letters from a couple of my students. This is Mike. Mike is in Missouri. I just wanted to let you know of my success using your vacant land system. As you know, I just got it recently and did my first mailing of 200 letters. I've gotten 21 responses so far, so he's got a 10% response rate. I never thought it would be that high. I have 6 land deals under contract. You were right. These sellers are really motivated. I will let you know how it all turns out. This is amazing. Thank you so much. And that was Mike. So I know the next question that you're asking is, Kathy, do I have to do all the work? Absolutely not. The more quickly you get the minutia out of your lives, the more deals you're going to do. So let's talk about marketing on autopilot. Number one, go ahead and attend some tax deed sales. Even if you just go a couple times to get a feel of how things are done, that's really awesome. Invest in some tax lien certificates. Folks, even if you don't get the piece of vacant land, let me tell you that investing in tax lien certificates is a really good way for you to build an additional stream of income. We have gotten some amazing results from buying tax lien certificates, because the taxes are still due. So your seller may either sell that piece of land to someone else, or they come back and they get some money together and they pay the tax lien. Only now all this interest has been growing on that property that you get paid. So investing in tax liens is pretty awesome all by itself. If you're lucky enough to get the piece of land, yahoo! It's awesome. And then start creating some profitable deals. Then implement some targeted direct mail like we talked about. Have a part-time person do the work for you. Again, these mailings are not huge. You're only mailing out maybe, 100, 200, 300, 400 letters at a time, maybe max. And then start creating more profitable deals. Does that make sense to everybody? Hope so. So does that sound pretty amazing and simple? Absolutely. Now, the other thing I've also done for you is I've created relationships with companies who will do all the work for you. All you do is provide them with the letter and the list, and they do everything else. Now, this is an option for doing these direct mail campaigns. Now, I'll tell you, I offer this as an option, so you can do them yourself. You can hire someone to do them for you, or you can use one of the companies that I provide for you. So you have flexibility and options as to how you want to create your business for yourself. And I've always been about creating flexible options for you. So these are my combined results for the last year. 13% response rate overall. Yay me. 6 figures in land sold, plus the ongoing profits on the leases and the income from the owner financing. Now, I will tell you that my income from the leases and the owner financing generally far surpasses the income from the land I sell, because it really pains me a lot to sell land, unless it's, in a situation where it's in a subdivision and all I can build is a house kind of thing. Or it's a commercial and all I can build is a commercial, building. That I'm not into. That's just not what I do. But generally, I don't sell a whole lot of vacant land. I sell some, but not a lot, because we really like the ongoing profits. All right, so Kathy, how can I start making the same big profits and income that you do? I just know that's the next question that's burning on your heart. And how can I get my money back on your system so there's no cost to me whatsoever? Okay. Here's another letter. This is Ted in Ohio, and I'll tell you about that in just a second. Just wanted to send you a quick email to update you on my progress since implementing your vacant land system. I was so glad to be one of your students with this system, since I'm already a marketing magic student as well. I can't believe how much momentum is going already. I've gotten 15 responses in the last 2 weeks, and I've written offers on 3 of those so far, and 2 of those contracts have come back signed from the sellers. Thank you for putting together such an amazing system, and thanks for answering all of my questions. Your system is going to increase my bottom line in a serious way. Here's one more for you. This is Jeff. He's also from Missouri. I got your vacant land system a couple of months ago and decided to try it out. Thanks for the quick start system. That was super helpful. That was something else that I've done. I did a quick start guide in the front of the manual. So as soon as you open the manual, it says, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. So I want you to be very directed, and I want you to be very focused on what you're doing. Jeff sent out his first mailing of 100 letters, and he got a vacant lot under contract for $1,000. The owner had passed away and the heirs lived out of state. Very typical. They were tired of paying the taxes on it. He ended up flipping that one to another investor, and that he knew, for $6,500. He says, not a huge profit, but for 100 letters and about a half an hour of my time, I'm good. I'm ready to do some more deals. Thanks so much. And think about this. If Jeff made $6,500 on that piece of vacant land, he completely paid the cost of my system plus more marketing, and he had change left over in his pocket. So that's pretty awesome. So what I want you to do right now is I want you to go to john.vacantlandgold.com. Okay, so there's no www dot in there. That go directly to john.vacantlandgold.com. The whole deal is laid out there for you. You need to be one of the first 6 people who takes advantage of this amazing offer. And I'll tell you why in a minute. In the meantime, I'm going to tell you what you're going to learn. You're going to learn how to have an endless stream of motivated sellers begging you to buy their land. Your deals are going to be pre-screened when you get the responses from the sellers. How to increase the value of vacant land, 14 ingenious ways to sell vacant land, 26 creative ways to lease vacant land, how to do deals with tax liens and tax deeds, how to find the sellers who don't want to be found, how to automate the whole system and get it into someone else's hands, and how to physically find a piece of vacant land. So a lot of these pieces of vacant land don't have physical addresses. So I teach you specifically how to use the property ID number to find that piece of vacant land, and that's really important. So in the system, complete step-by-step directions and the direct mail campaigns for you, complete directions to automate the system and get it into someone else's hands. The quick start guide is in there for you. All of the forms are on USB, so all of the contracts, all the evaluation sheets, the letters, the letter of intent, all the disclosures, all of that is on USB for you. So this is a complete system for buying and selling vacant land, guys. The resource kit is also on USB. So this is where you're going to find list brokers. This is where you'll find the companies to do the mailings for you. This is where you're going to find some hard money lenders if you need them. So the resource kit has all of that information on there for you. I explain thoroughly how to buy tax certificates and tax deeds. And your investment in my system today is going to be only $1,597. But John beat on me a little bit because you guys are doing some vacant land out there in Missouri. And so we are going to make a very special offer today. I am offering a special discount of $400 for the first 6 motivated investors who take action right now, making your total investment only $1,197. So you need to take action right now. And then the following bonuses totaling over $5,200 are also going to be for those first 6 motivated investors who take action right now. And I'm going to show you how you can own my system at no cost to you whatsoever. That's also for the first 6 folks. So go to john.vacantlandgold.com. And the whole offer is laid out there for you. So john.vacantlandgold.com. There it is, john.vacantlandgold.com. I'll leave that up there for just a second for you before we move on. There's no www dot in front of that or anything. It's just john.vacantlandgold.com. All right. So here are the bonuses that I'm going to include. First of all, you are going to receive my $1 Million Resource Kit, which we just talked about. It has a value of $497. You are going to receive a consulting certificate with me. Folks, you have 1 full year to work directly with me via email to ask any question that you might have about your vacant land marketing. You will receive my personal email address. Guys, nobody else does that for me. I'm not pawning you off on somebody else. It's me that you're going to be working with. This is a $4,500 value. You'll get my personal email address. They call me the fastest guru in the Northeast, South, and West, seriously, because I always have either an iPad with me, my laptop, my desktop. So I'm really quick about answering your questions. Now, one thing that I will suggest, this was suggested to me by my students. When I answer your question for you, I'm very thorough about what I do, about everything that I do. Go ahead and print my response to you and put it in the front pocket of your manual so you have it. Okay. And I thought that was such a good idea, because you can refer back to it again when you need it. So that's a $4,500 value. Um, this is the next bonus you are going to receive is an entitlement certificate. With my personal CPA, you are going to get a 30-minute consultation with my personal CPA. He is a real estate investor. He is a financial planner. He is also admitted to practice before the U.S. tax court. He is like one of 12 in the country who is admitted to practice before the U.S. tax court. The man is so smart, it's scary. So what I want you to do before you make your appointment to speak to him, write down whatever questions are burning on your heart. And it doesn't necessarily have to be real estate related. It can be about any part of your tax structure or any part of your business or whatever. This is the best $250 bonus you will ever receive. I have 6 of these available. He charges $250 for a consult, and he really limits the number of these that I'm allowed to have for each event that I do. So we have 6 of these available. I also offer a 10-day free look enrollment plan. Folks, give us a deposit today of $1,197, knowing that you have a full 10 days to look through the system, make sure that it's everything that I told you it was going to be. And to be perfectly honest with you, John, I have never, ever had a return from the vacant land product, ever. But we've got a bunch of students who are doing some seriously profitable deals. All right. So how many folks in our listening audience today would take my system if it was absolutely free? Would anybody do that? Wish I could hear them yell and scream. Here's what I am going to offer. Now, folks, I will tell you right now that if you Google me, if you go to my website, you will not find the offer that I am making to you folks today anywhere else. This is something I put together just for John. John and I have been working together for years. And this is something really special that we put together for John's students and John's customers. So here's the offer that I am going to make. I'm going to offer an incentive rebate. Folks, when you do a deal using my direct mail campaigns within the next 12 months, so you have no excuse not to get started, send me a copy of your testimonial letter, proof that you did the deal, which means the contract, the information from the title company, and so forth, and a copy of your profit check. And I will refund the entire investment of $1,197, and you keep the system and all of the bonuses. Now, why would I be dumb enough to do that? First of all, we're going to offer that to the first 6 folks today. And the reason that I'm only offering it to the first 6 is because I know my system works. And I'm only willing to write a certain number of rebate certificates or rebates every month. So you need to be one of the first 6. You need to jump on board. You need to grab your copy. Now, remember, so you've got all of the bonuses. You have me for a full year. You have an incentive rebate giving you a full year to get a deal done. Folks, there's absolutely no reason for you not to get started, especially when you've got me to hold your hand. So you must be one of the first 6. You must take action right now. You will receive my vacant land gold system, all of the discounts and the bonuses valued at $6,000 and the rebate certificate. So go to john.vacantlandgold.com, john.vacantlandgold.com. If you have any questions or you're having trouble with your credit card going through or something, feel free to call our office, 941-792-5390, 941-792-5390.